Hello everyone, welcome back to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris.
This is episode 173, and today we're talking about...
stack height.
What?
Yeah, what is a stack height? We're talking about shoes today.
So this all came about because when we were doing the episode about the 3 things you need for strength training, I don't remember if I said it in the episode or if I was just mentioning to Coach Chris ahead of time, but when you all come in to strength train and wear your cushy high shoe, so if there's like a marshmallow under your foot, you are not doing yourself any favors. We don't care if it's a new or an old shoe. When it comes to just a very high stack shoe, you're going to lose ground feel when you strength train. I'm still on the soapbox. This isn't even about strength training. But it got us thinking about talking about things like stack height because it really is, it is timely, and it applies definitely not just to why you shouldn't do it for strength training, but more importantly, what the heck to do about it when it comes to running.
Yeah, and also a lot of people will be looking at purchasing some shoes for their upcoming season, or if you're rotating shoes through, maybe you're curious about stack height, maybe you've seen these super shoes and wonder if they're for you. So in this episode, we're going to talk about all of the different things about what it means for a shoe to have a stack height and what that actually means in terms of your running and performance. And again, this is really top of mind, not just because of that conversation, but this year in total, I think we've seen the rise of the super shoe or the super stack shoe. Not like the carbon plated shoes, but these big marshmallow of a shoe, like you said.
I think there's a certain level of FOMO here too when it comes to athletes, because I admit I have the same reaction when I see them. I'm like, whoa, what is that, right? And for me personally, it's not necessarily something that I want, but I'm mesmerized by it, and then you're instantly thinking, I wonder what that feels like. Do I need that too? And then you go down this really stack height rabbit hole because it looks so different.
Yeah, I satisfied my curiosity by trying one on
and
walking around in it. I found that it wasn't for me. I just didn't feel comfortable, and I had the same sort of curiosity, but underfoot, I didn't like the way it felt. So, that's part of what you should be thinking about when you're deciding to buy a pair of shoes is what it feels like on your foot. Not the will I fit in, will I, everybody else has this, so I should have it too. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what a stack height is, how it affects runners, and the pros and cons of different types of stack heights for running shoes.
So that you can go shopping a little bit more confident. Back it up. What are stack heights, right? A stack height really is the term used to refer to the amount of shoe material between your foot and the ground, right? So it's literally all the way across. How chunky is it, right? So something like a flip-flop, let's take running shoes off the table. Something like a flip-flop is going to be usually, especially like a cheap one, right? A really thin one that you get for like $1, that's going to be a low stack height. Something that's more of a Birkenstock's going to be mid, and then something like a chunky UGG flip-flop or slide, that is going to be a high, right? So don't think about up, down, just think about all the way across. They can range from, of course, barefoot to maximal when we're talking about running shoes. And the measurement is often equated with the amount of cushioning a shoe has, right? So the higher the marshmallow, in theory, the more cushion. So if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening, maybe now is a great time to switch over to YouTube. We have some visuals. A higher stack height, this is a great example of a high stack shoe. You're going to get more cushion, and again, more space between your foot and the ground. A lower stack, so we have some pretty flat shoes as a second example, where you're getting less cushion, generally speaking, because there's just less foam between your foot and the ground. And of course, all shoe companies have different things on what their foam feels like, the benefits of them, the materials differ. It's not always equivalent, right? Because ones might be lighter, one might be heavier, one might be more dense, less dense. So it can feel soft or firm. It's really a great place to kind of start when you're going to start shopping. Think about what kind of stack height is feeling the best when I'm trying things on, to make sure that you get into the right shoe for your running needs.
Now we've talked about a shoe's stack height and what that means. Let's talk about how it actually impacts your running shoe's ride. So first of all, what does ride mean? Ride is a term used to discuss how a shoe feels underfoot while you are running. And some runners are looking for more ground feel, so being able to actually feel that ground underfoot when you are running. I think that every runner should be seeking that, right? We had a good conversation before we started recording about runners and ground feel.
We need ground feel.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for every single run, but we want to know where the ground is in relation to our body because it helps our proprioception, which is our body's ability to react of, how we're moving in space.
Yeah. So when we are using a lower stack, we're going to have more ground feel. And those who want more cushioning or more protection in some cases are going to be looking at a higher stack height.
Yep. All right, you alluded to this, but heel to toe drop, right? What is that? But it is, first of all, it's another thing to really take into consideration when considering a shoe's level of cushioning. So heel to toe drop, this is probably the one that you're more familiar with, is heel to toe drop is a measurement of the difference in cushioning between the heel and the midfoot. So higher heel drops tend to work well for heel strikers because it's putting them into more of a position to midfoot strike, and lower drops are going to really usually cater toward individuals who are natural mid or forefoot strikers. So that's just in general where people tend to put into big buckets. So if you're running in a shoe and it feels wrong, chances are it is from a heel to toe drop type of explanation.
Yeah, I mean, another thing about this is that you could have a shoe that feels wrong for a specific type of run, but not for a different run. So what I mean by that is some runners will gravitate to the more cushioning for a longer run or for an easy workout or recovery miles, but will need to have the minimal stack or a smaller stack height for something like speed work on a track.
Yeah, and to that point, that is absolutely... If you're going to stop listening, it's going to be after this comment, and then you can maximize your time. You need to listen to what Coach Chris just said, because that's a big one. For recovery runs or more modest paced running, you can use a more cushioned shoe because you're not hitting the ground with as much force. Your form isn't as crucial. When you do intentional speed work, in theory, you're going to want to feel the ground more. So we're going to want to have a thinner shoe to be able to help with that ground reaction force so that we are reacting well and our form can dial in without the risk of our body not knowing where the heck it is in relation to space.
Yeah, so...
Okay, later, next time. Just kidding, we have more.
No, but I will deviate from the script a little bit here and say, this is part of the reason why I personally am not a huge fan of the super stack shoes is for racing, right? So these high stack shoes that we see that have been sort of marketed as the next level of the carbon plated shoe.
I agree with you.
So when we are racing, and racing is not recovery miles, it's long. So say if you're running a marathon, it's going to be a longer distance, so you want some level of cushioning. But if you are truly racing, you are wasting so much energy that's being absorbed in that cushion that's not coming back to you in return.
Yeah, he's talking about the big chunky ones, right? Like the marshmallow absorption rate.
Right, those ones that
That's a technical term.
Right. We've said it 4 times now, I think it is. But we're talking about shoes that are 40 millimeter stack height or higher, which some of these 2024 super shoes were. And I'm not sure what the trend will be in 2025, but we really saw a lot of these come on the market and a lot of people racing in them. And for some runners whose feet need that cushioning or need that support or their biomechanics support it,
go for it.
By all means.
Yeah.
Like we want you in the shoe that's going to work best for you. Personally, I'm not a fan of it for myself and even for my runners because I think it takes a lot of the energy away. I don't think it's the most efficient way to race a marathon.
I also think it's hard to corner in them, if I'm going to be honest, not to get too nitty gritty, but I've absolutely had athletes try to take a hard 90 or definitely a hairpin, and they're like, whoa, right? Because sometimes, a lot of times we're running on streets that are slanted, and we're already on an edge, and our body might not be able to feel the ground that well, and it is like a little dicey. I've had more than one sprained ankle for my own athletes, which has just given us a good kind of recipe for kind of what to wear when we're racing versus training. How do we measure stack heights, right? There are several different ways to measure a shoe stack height, but one standard exists, and here's the deal. This is one of those stats that you're going to be able to find real easily, right? Every retailer is going to list it. Sometimes it comes from the brand information, but also sometimes measuring it themselves, like Running Warehouse, which has its own detailed way of measuring stack height, heel to toe drop, and more. Stack heights matter in competition because there are stack height regulations as well from World Athletics. Stacks cannot exceed 25 millimeters for track events or of 800 meters or above, or 40 millimeters for road events. So really, those thresholds exist really truly for a reason.
Wow, I'm surprised about the 25 millimeter number because that seems pretty high for a track event.
But I think, remember, it's 800 or above, so that's going all the way up to 10K.
Yeah.
But also, that does seem high. Yeah.
On a track, yeah.
I want to know if someone's done it. Suggest if you've done it.
Let's talk about the 3 types of stacks. So minimalist and low stack height running shoes. This would be our number 1. So this would be shoes that offer little cushioning. And we did mention at the top that cushioning is different, isn't necessarily related to stack height, but when you have just 10 millimeters of underfoot cushioning, it's going to be less cushioned than those 40 millimeter ones just by nature of what's underneath your foot. So this would include your barefoot shoes. It also would include some of your track-specific shoes.
Yep. Or your zero-drop shoes, right?
Yeah, so say more about that. Tell everybody what a zero-drop shoe is.
A zero-drop shoe is where your midfoot and your midfoot and your heel are at the same level. So you don't have a drop. Your heel isn't higher at all than your midfoot. It's so interesting to me, and we're old, so welcome. However, it is cool to see the progression. I mean, 15 years ago, this was the trend. Minimalist was the trend. Vibram was vibing, right? Yes. Newton was thriving. Well, I mean, still small business, but like really thriving because they had dropped to 6, 5, 4, 3 millimeter drops, even some zero drops, and people were learning about the benefits of truly minimal running. And I'm using air quotes. There are absolutely benefits. You have to adapt yourself gradually.
Right.
But that's where zero drop really got its start. And now to be swung in the complete opposite direction is wild.
I mean, this is what we see, though, even with like strength training, with triathlon training, we see these sort of waves that happen. So there will be a new trend, then there will be the complete opposite will then become popular. One day you're eating a bunch of acai berries because it's the new superfood, and then you're on chia seeds, right? Like that's just the way that things go. And I think part of it is scientific research and studies and data, and just the technology has accelerated so much in the past decade. So we do have more information. Another part of it, honestly, I think if we're really being truthful about it, is our commerce style.
Absolutely.
It's
marketing. It's marketing and consumption. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it is capitalism in some ways because it's just another thing to sell to people who are interested in running. So that aside, the benefits of a minimal stack shoe would be, or a low stack shoe would be, being able to feel the ground underfoot. That's it. If you're looking for that more natural running experience, and when we say that, it's like, similar to running in the yard when you're a kid with no shoes on, right? Being able to feel the ground and to be able to react to that feeling, then you're going to want these minimal shoes if they work for your body.
And I will reiterate this over and over. I hear conversations happening at Edge all the time in terms of like, oh, I run in this shoe, and people, wanting to migrate. If you are going from a higher stack or a higher drop shoe and reducing it, please, sweet baby Jesus, go slow. Like your body is going to need a chance to adapt. Don't just change cold turkey. You're going to use it on your recovery days first, then you're going to use it only in the beginning of your long run, and then you can grow from there. But don't just switch your complete shoe all at once. That's true for switching any type of stack height heel toe drop.
Definitely. And integrating this into track workouts would be a good place to start.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Because that would be 1 day a week, potentially 2, but you're using other shoes throughout the week so that you can make that adjustment.
Time to go shopping. So to the middle. Medium stack height running shoes. These are really kind of the one that I was showing in the beginning. It's going to have a just kind of an average amount of cushioning. They're going to be pretty versatile. They're going to be able to use for kind of every type of runner distance. It's your jack of all trades. That's probably why the majority of runners actually prefer shoes with a stack height that's kind of near the middle, like that closer to like 25 to 30 probably. If you're new to running or you're looking for a shoe that can do it all, I definitely think starting with a medium stack shoe is the way to go. And then as you build up your mileage or refine kind of what you're wanting to race, you're going to be able to feel the difference. Medium stack shoes are for sure the most versatile when it comes to speed, tempo, and long efforts.
This is your jack of all trades shoe. I love this because, I have a pair of Pegasus in my car that I could use if I'm doing speed work. If I'm doing speed work
outside today,
I could use in any sort of condition, and that's the go-to. So our third type is a highly cushioned or maximalist running shoe. These are the ones that we were talking about with the high stacks underneath. This is our highly cushioned shoe that is going to put some
marshmallow.
It's going to put some marshmallow under your feet, but it's going to actually prohibit you from being able to feel the ground. So these shoes provide more cushioning, but they don't necessarily provide more support.
Yeah, and this is where it just gets so tough because you have them on and they feel amazing and you kind of feel invincible because you're not feeling the ground and you're bouncing along and you're fluffy, but then later in the day you're like, wow, that really zapped me, which probably means you didn't break them in enough. So, right, if you can't feel the ground as well, your body, I promise you, is working a little bit harder to stabilize, especially if you're using them inappropriately for like faster speeds. So just dial back. If you get to that stage, you're going to dial back to those recovery runs only.
This is what I think about the stability part is when we have those highly cushioned shoes, I think about all the extra work that your feet, ankles, and lower legs are doing to stabilize as you're taking each of those steps, because you mentioned cornering. So if we're thinking about an athlete coming around on a marshmallow and having to make that pivot and their ankle is going this way because they have the cushion that's dropping, right?
Yeah, and their knees overriding it, yeah.
Exactly. All the way up your chain in your body, you are doing a lot of stabilizing. So there is a benefit to having a little bit of that work, right? But also if you're running every single day in these shoes or inappropriately, as you mentioned, you are setting yourself up potentially for injury. And a lot of runners think that with more cushioning, they won't get injured.
Or they could do more.
Right.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we've got really impact, right? Running is a single leg squat, jump, whatever it is. It's a single leg exercise. And every single time that we land on one foot, we are landing, when we're running easy, we're landing with 2 times our body weight on one leg. When we're running fast, we go over 3 times our body weight on one leg. So if we're going to take away ground feel, we will want to use a shoe that so let me say that. Okay. So if we take ground feel away, right, we're in a super chunky shoe, you are better off running at that modest pace. So you're only hitting at 2 times body rate instead of going all the way up to speed and running at 3 times body weight and not feeling the ground, right? Because then your body is really having to figure out where the heck it is in relation to the rest of the world. This is why we don't love a super shoe for things like track work.
The types of running shoes that you choose, so regardless of your stack height, it's a personal decision. And so while there are some sort of guidelines of we don't want to use these super cushiony shoes for track workout because of the reasons we mentioned, it is, at the end of the day, up to you about what shoe you choose, what you're comfortable in, and what works best for your body. So for me, I love a minimalist, super thin shoe. I did a lot of training in the streak flies.
Yeah.
And I was race walking in the streak flies, which was awesome. But that's very different than one of these thicker shoes that I'm able to train in now when I'm doing easy recovery runs. The only reason that I could do that with the minimalist shoes is because I'm healthy and don't have plantar fasciitis or other lower leg and foot injuries. Our runners that have some sort of past injury history of foot issues will probably want to stay away from those.
Yeah, absolutely. It is super, super personal. My big thing is, especially because we have this newer player, right, where we have this super stack option. If you are making a change to go super stack or you're making a change to reduce your stack, please, please, please do it mindfully, do it gradually, and then you'll really find out what works best for you. And that's the whole point of it all.
Exactly. So happy shopping for your new shoes, everybody.
All right, till next time.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Mend. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.